The strangest thing about falling in love was that it didn't begin with someone saying my name. It began with a stranger staring at me across a crowded room like he had been searching for me all night. At the time, I didn't know his name. I didn't know where he lived. I didn't know what kind of music he liked, what his favorite coffee was, or whether he was the kind of man who stayed when things became difficult. I only knew one thing. I couldn't stop looking at him. My name is Adam, I'm 25, and for most of my adult life, I had been told that I was lucky. People noticed me. They always had. It happened at college, at cafes, at work, on trains, in elevators, almost anywhere I went. Men would smile too long. They would invent reasons to start conversations. Sometimes they would ask for my number before they even knew my name. I would laugh about it with my friends. But secretly, I hated what came with it. People loved the version of me they saw from across the room. They loved my face. They loved the confidence they assumed I had. They loved the idea of me. But very few people wanted to know the man underneath all of that. And after enough disappointments, I started believing maybe that was all I would ever get. Attention. Not love. That Friday night, I was sitting on my couch in sweatpants, scrolling through my phone when Ryan called me. Get dressed. I didn't even say hello. No. You don't even know where I'm taking you. I know enough. He laughed. I'm coming over. Ryan. Already outside. I looked toward the window. A second later, my phone buzzed again. Open the door, idiot. I groaned. 20 minutes later, I was standing outside my apartment with Ryan beside me, listening to him explain for the 10th time why going to a gay club wasn't a life-changing commitment. It's one night, he said. I hate clubs. You hate leaving your apartment. That too. You've been single for almost 2 years. I'm aware. You need to meet people. I meet people. People you actually like. I gave him a look. He smiled. That's different. He was right. And maybe that was why I finally agreed. The club was louder than I expected. Lights moved across the room. Music pulsed through the floor. People laughed, danced, shouted over the music. Ryan disappeared almost immediately after finding someone he knew. I stood near the bar, wondering if I could leave without anyone noticing. Then I saw him. He was standing near the opposite side of the room. Tall, broad-shouldered, dark hair that looked slightly messy, as though he had run his fingers through it too many times. And a smile that made me forget what I had been thinking. I watched him laugh at something someone said. Then, almost as if he felt my eyes on him, he looked up. Our eyes met. Everything around me seemed to become distant. I had been looked at thousands of times. But nobody had ever looked at me like that. Josh didn't just glance. He held my gaze. And somehow, instead of feeling exposed, I felt seen. He smiled. I looked away. Then I looked back. He was still watching me. My heart started beating harder. A few minutes later, he walked toward me. Hi. His voice was warm. Hi. You look like you're planning your escape. I laughed despite myself. Is it that obvious? A little. I leaned against the bar. I was dragged here. By a friend? Unfortunately. He smiled. Same. I looked at him. First time? Tonight. He nodded. Yeah. I laughed. No way. Why is that so surprising? Because you look like you belong here. He raised an eyebrow. And what does belonging here look like? I realized I had no answer. He smiled again. I'm Josh. Adam. Nice to meet you, Adam. There was something about the way he said my name. Soft. Deliberate. Like he wanted to remember it. We talked. At first it was awkward. Then less awkward. Then somehow easy. He asked what I did. I asked where he lived. We talked about music, terrible dating experiences, favorite movies, food, and why neither of us liked loud clubs as much as everyone apparently assumed. Eventually Josh leaned closer so I could hear him. So why did you really come tonight? I smiled. My best friend threatened me. He laughed. And you? I think I was tired of staying home. Something about his answer made me look at him differently. There was loneliness underneath his smile. I recognized it. Maybe that was why I stayed. Maybe that was why, when the club became louder and the night moved faster, I kept finding excuses to remain beside him. When Ryan finally appeared and announced he was ready to leave, I felt something close to disappointment. Josh seemed to notice. You're leaving? I guess. He hesitated. Then he pulled out his phone. Can I have your number? I looked at him. Are you always this direct? Only when I'm nervous. That surprised me. You're nervous? Very. I laughed. I gave him my number. He called me so I would have his too. His name appeared on my screen. Josh. For some reason, seeing it there made my chest feel warm. "Text me when you get home," he said. "I will." I took a few steps away, then turned around. He was still looking at me. I smiled. He smiled back. That should have been the end of it. Just one night. Just one stranger. But while I walked out of that club beside Ryan, I realized something had changed. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't thinking about who wanted me. I was thinking about one person. And I wanted him. I barely slept that night. Not because anything had happened. Because almost nothing had. And somehow that was worse. I kept replaying our conversation. The way Josh smiled. The way he leaned toward me so he could hear. The nervousness he had tried to hide. The way he said my name. At 2 in the morning, my phone lit up. "Josh, did you make it home?" I smiled before I even realized I was doing it. "Me, yeah. You." His reply came immediately. "Josh, home. Still thinking about you." I stared at the screen. Then laughed quietly. That was how it started. One message became 10. 10 became hours of conversation. Josh remembered things I had mentioned casually at the club. My favorite coffee. The fact that I hated horror movies. The fact that I liked quiet mornings. He remembered everything. And every time I opened my phone and saw his name, I felt that same small rush. Soon, messages turned into calls. Our first phone call lasted 43 minutes. The second lasted 2 hours. The third ended because we realized it was nearly 3 in the morning. "What are we doing?" I asked, laughing. "I don't know. You're keeping me awake. You're doing the same thing to me." I smiled into the darkness. There was something different about him. Josh could flirt without making everything feel sexual. He could tease me without making me uncomfortable. He made me feel attractive without making me feel like an object. One night, he asked me something I wasn't expecting. "Do you ever get tired of people looking at you?" I went quiet. "How did you know?" I guessed. I stared at the ceiling. All the time. Why? Because they usually stop looking when I start talking. He didn't laugh. He didn't make a joke. He just said quietly, "Then they're idiots." That sentence stayed with me. A few days later, Josh asked me out. Our first date was at a small restaurant that was quiet enough for us to actually hear each other. I spent the first 10 minutes feeling strangely nervous. Josh noticed. "You're quiet." I'm thinking. Dangerous. I smiled. "You're the one who asked me out." "I know. You seem nervous too." He smiled. "I am." "Why?" He looked at me for a moment. "Because I like you." My heart jumped. No games. No pretending. Just honesty. I looked down at the table because suddenly I didn't know what to do with my hands. After dinner we walked through the city. Our shoulders brushed several times. Neither of us moved away. Eventually Josh stopped. "What?" He looked at me. "Nothing." "Then why did you stop?" "I just wanted to look at you." I laughed softly. "You're impossible." "Probably." He reached for my hand. His fingers closed gently around mine. I froze. Not because I disliked it, because I liked it too much. His thumb moved slowly across my knuckles. "Okay?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah." We walked like that for several minutes. At my building, neither of us immediately said goodbye. Josh stood close. I could smell his cologne. I could feel the warmth of him. He looked at my mouth, then back into my eyes. But he didn't kiss me. Instead, he leaned forward and pressed a soft kiss to my cheek. "Good night, Adam." I watched him walk away. I touched the place he had kissed. And smiled. That night, I realized I had stopped waiting for Josh's messages. I was waiting for Josh. And that was far more dangerous. Josh began coming to my apartment. At first it was for coffee. Then dinner. Then movies. Then somehow it became normal for him to be there. I would open my front door after work and find him sitting on my couch like he had always belonged there. He learned where I kept everything. He knew which mug was mine. He knew that I hated too much sugar in coffee. He knew that when I was stressed, I became quiet. And somehow, instead of being annoyed by how quickly he understood me, I loved it. One evening we cooked dinner together. Or more accurately, Josh cooked while I pretended to help. "You're terrible at this." "I'm emotionally supportive." "You've chopped one tomato in 20 minutes. "It was a complicated tomato." He laughed. I laughed. And suddenly he reached over and wiped a tiny spot of sauce from my cheek. His hand lingered. Neither of us moved. The room became quiet. Josh looked into my eyes. I could feel my heartbeat. He leaned closer. Then stopped. He waited. I knew what he was asking without words. I nodded. His lips touched mine. Softly. Slowly. The first kiss was nothing like the kisses I had imagined. There was no rush. No performance. No need to prove anything. Just warmth. His hand rested gently against my jaw. I held the front of his shirt. When we finally pulled apart, we stayed close. Our foreheads touched. Neither of us spoke. Josh smiled. "You okay?" I whispered, "Yeah." He brushed his thumb across my cheek. "Good." I kissed him again. This time I was the one who moved first. That changed something between us. After that, affection became natural. I hugged him from behind while he made coffee. He would pull me against his chest when we watched television. Sometimes we fell asleep on the couch with my head on his shoulder. Sometimes he would wake me in the morning because he had made breakfast. And sometimes we simply lay together in silence, listening to each other breathe. One rainy night, Josh stayed over. We watched a movie, but neither of us paid attention. Eventually I turned toward him. "You staying?" He smiled. "If you want me to." "I do." That night, we climbed into bed together. Nothing felt rushed. Nothing felt forced. We kissed. We held each other. We whispered until our voices became quiet. And sometime after midnight, I fell asleep with my head against his chest. When I woke, his arm was still around me. For a few seconds I didn't move. I just listened to his breathing. He opened his eyes. "Morning." I smiled. "Morning." He pulled me closer. I buried my face against him. There was something terrifyingly beautiful about waking up beside someone and realizing you wanted them to be there tomorrow. And the day after that. And the day after that. My feelings were becoming impossible to ignore. Josh wasn't simply attractive anymore. He was becoming familiar. Comfortable. Safe. Home. One morning, while he slept beside me, I looked at him and thought, maybe this is what I've been waiting for. And for the first time in my life, I was afraid of losing something I had only just found. Ryan noticed everything. Especially Josh. The first time he saw Josh sitting on my couch, he looked between us with a grin. "Oh." I frowned. "What?" "You're gone." "I'm not gone." "You are completely gone." Josh laughed. I threw a cushion at Ryan. "You're annoying." "I'm right." Ryan was right. I was falling. And I was falling harder than I wanted to admit. Josh and I started doing almost everything together. Grocery shopping. Late-night drives. Breakfast on Sundays. Long walks. We had our own private jokes. Our own routines. I knew his moods. He knew mine. But as happy as I was, a small part of me was terrified. Because every relationship I had ever believed in eventually ended. Sometimes people wanted the handsome version of Adam. The fun version. The confident version. But when they discovered my insecurities, they disappeared. I was afraid Josh would do the same. One evening I became distant. Josh noticed immediately. "What's wrong?" "Nothing. Adam." I sighed. "I'm fine." "No, you're not." I turned away. He stepped closer. "Talk to me." I looked at him. "Everyone wants me until they actually get to know me." He said nothing. I continued. "They like the way I look. They like being seen with me. They like flirting with me. But eventually they realize I'm not whatever fantasy they created." Josh's expression softened. "You think that's what I'm doing?" "I don't know." He came closer. "I don't want your face." I laughed nervously. "That sounds awful." He smiled. "You know what I mean." His hand touched mine. "I want your quiet mornings." I looked at him. "I want your terrible jokes." I smiled. "I want the way you pretend not to care when you're actually overthinking everything." I swallowed. "I want the version of you nobody else gets to see." My eyes burned. Josh stepped forward and pulled me into his arms. I held him tightly. For a long moment, neither of us moved. That hug felt different. It wasn't just affection. It was reassurance. It was a promise without words. Later that night, we sat together on the bed. I rested my head against his shoulder. He kissed my forehead. Then my temple. Then my cheek. I turned toward him. Our lips met again. The kiss lasted longer this time. There was warmth, trust, and everything we had been too afraid to say. We stayed together that night, wrapped in each other's arms, letting the rest of the world disappear. When morning came, Josh was still beside me. His hand was resting against my waist. I smiled. He opened his eyes. "You're staring." "I know." "Why?" "Because you're here." He pulled me closer. "I'm not planning on going anywhere." I wanted to believe him. I really did. But I didn't know then that those words would soon be tested. Because the hardest part of falling in love isn't admitting that someone matters. It's realizing how much power they have to break your heart. For a while, everything was perfect. Too perfect. That should have been my warning. Josh started receiving phone calls he wouldn't answer in front of me. At first I ignored them. Then I noticed he was becoming tense. One evening his phone rang while he was in the shower. The screen lit up on the table. I wasn't trying to read it. I just saw the name. And I saw Josh's expression when he came back and noticed the phone. He went still. Who is it? Nobody. I stared at him. Josh. He sat down. For the first time since I met him, he looked genuinely afraid. It's someone from my past. Your ex. He nodded. What does he want? I don't know. Then why are you scared? He rubbed his hands together. I waited. Eventually he said, because he knows how to make me question everything. The conversation became bigger than I expected. Josh told me about his previous relationship. It had ended badly. There had been betrayal, broken trust, promises that turned into lies. And afterward, Josh had convinced himself that the easiest way to avoid getting hurt again was to never become dependent on anyone. Then he told me something that hurt even more. He had been planning to leave the city. He had received an opportunity elsewhere. Before meeting me, he had intended to take it. I stared at him. You were going to leave? Yes. When? I don't know. You don't know? Adam, please. No. I stood. How long have you known? He looked down. A while. I felt something crack inside me. Suddenly every memory felt different. The first night at the club. The first kiss. The nights in my apartment. The mornings we spent together. All of it. Was I just temporary? No. Then why didn't you tell me? Because I didn't know what I wanted. I laughed bitterly. You knew enough to kiss me. His face changed. That isn't fair. Maybe not. I could feel tears in my eyes. I let you into my life. I know. I trusted you. I know. And you were just going to leave? I haven't left. But you were thinking about it. He stepped toward me. I stepped back. Adam? No. I shook my head. I don't want promises because you're afraid I'll walk away. I want the truth. You are the truth. Then choose me. He looked devastated. I'm trying. Trying isn't enough. Silence filled the room. Josh nodded slowly. Then he picked up his jacket. I love you. The words came so unexpectedly that I froze. He looked at me. I didn't know I was going to say that. Neither did I. But the pain was still there. I need time, I whispered. Josh looked at me for several seconds. Then he nodded. I understand. He walked to the door. Before leaving, he turned around. I never regretted meeting you. Then he left. The door closed. And for the first time since that night at the club, my apartment was completely silent. I sat on the edge of the bed. The same bed where we had laughed. Where we had kissed. Where I had fallen asleep in his arms. And now I was alone. The days after Josh left felt strangely empty. I went to work. I answered messages. I saw Ryan. I smiled when I was supposed to. But nothing felt real. My apartment was the worst. His coffee mug was still in the cabinet. His jacket was still hanging over the chair. A movie we had watched together was still paused on the television. Everywhere I looked, he was there. Except he wasn't. Ryan found me sitting on the couch one evening. You miss him. I laughed without humor. Obviously. Ryan sat beside me. You're not afraid Josh will leave. I looked at him. You're afraid someone finally matters enough to hurt you. I stared at the floor. Then I whispered, I think you're right. Ryan squeezed my shoulder. You love him. I do. Then stop pretending you don't. That night I finally allowed myself to admit it. I didn't just miss Josh. I loved him. And I wanted him back. But I couldn't force him to choose me. So I tried to move forward. Days passed. Then one evening someone knocked on my door. I wasn't expecting anyone. I opened it. Josh was standing there. My heart stopped. He looked tired. He looked nervous. But he was there. I stared at him. Hi. Hi. Neither of us moved. Then he said, Can I come in? I stepped aside. He entered. For a moment we just stood there. Then Josh looked at me. I turned it down. I blinked. What? The opportunity. He exhaled. I turned it down. I didn't know what to say. He continued. I spent years thinking leaving was the same thing as being free. His voice shook slightly. But when I imagined leaving this city, I didn't imagine a new beginning. He looked at me. I imagined losing you. My eyes filled with tears. Josh moved closer. The night I met you, I wasn't looking for a relationship. I know. I wasn't looking for anything. I know. But then you looked at me. He laughed softly. And suddenly I cared. I wiped my eyes. I was scared. So was I. He took another step. I've been afraid of love for a long time. I nodded. Me too. He reached for my hand. This time I let him take it. I don't want to keep running every time something becomes real. I looked at him. Then don't. He pulled me into his arms. I held him so tightly it almost hurt. He buried his face against my shoulder. I closed my eyes. For the first time in days I could breathe. Josh pulled back just enough to look at me. I'm sorry. I know. I should have told you. Yes. I should never have made you feel temporary. You did. I know. Then he kissed me. It was not the nervous kiss from our first date. It wasn't the gentle first kiss from my kitchen. It was the kiss of two people who had almost lost something precious and finally understood what it meant. When we separated, Josh rested his forehead against mine. Are we okay? I smiled through my tears. We're getting there. He smiled. That's enough for me. That night he stayed. We talked for hours. We hugged. We kissed. Eventually we fell asleep beside each other, his arm around me. And for the first time, sleeping next to Josh didn't feel like a temporary moment. It felt like coming home. Several months later, I returned to the club where I had met Josh. Ryan was with us. He had insisted. This place changed your life, he said. I hate that you're right. Josh laughed beside me. His hand found mine. I looked down at our fingers. That small gesture still made me smile. So much had changed since that first night. Josh and I were no longer trying to figure out what we were. We were simply together. We had learned how to argue without running. How to apologize without pride. How to talk about fear instead of hiding it. How to let each other have bad days. How to love each other on ordinary mornings, not just romantic nights. And most importantly, we had learned that love wasn't about never being afraid. It was about staying even when you were. We stood near the same bar where we had first talked. I looked across the room. For a second, I remembered the man I had been that night. Lonely. Defensive. Convinced nobody would ever love the real me. Josh squeezed my hand. You're thinking too loudly. I laughed. I was remembering. The first night. I nodded. You were staring at me. He smiled. You were staring first. No. Yes. You're lying. Probably. I laughed. Then Josh turned toward me. Do you know what I thought when I first saw you? What? I thought you were going to break my heart. I smiled. Really? Yeah. Why? Because you looked like someone I could fall for. My smile faded. He continued. And I knew that was dangerous. I leaned closer. What changed? Josh smiled. You. I laughed softly. He touched my cheek. You made me realize that love isn't supposed to feel like losing freedom. I stared into his eyes. What is it supposed to feel like? He answered quietly. Like choosing someone. My chest tightened. And choosing them again tomorrow. I looked at him. And the day after. He nodded. And the day after that. I pulled him into a hug. He wrapped both arms around me. The club was loud. People were dancing around us. Music was shaking the floor. But for a moment I heard none of it. All I heard was his heartbeat. The heartbeat of the stranger I had met months ago. The stranger who had become my best friend. My safe place. My home. Later that night we went back to my apartment. We changed into comfortable clothes. We made tea. We sat together on the couch. Josh rested his head on my shoulder. I played with his hair. No dramatic music. No perfect words. Just us. Eventually we went to bed. He pulled me close beneath the blankets. I kissed his forehead. He kissed mine. Good night, Adam. Good night, Josh. His arm tightened around me. I love you. I smiled in the darkness. I love you too. I closed my eyes. And as sleep slowly carried me away, I thought about how strange life was. I had spent years being wanted by people who barely knew me. Then one night I walked into a crowded club because my best friend refused to let me stay home. And there he was. Just a stranger. A beautiful stranger. A man whose eyes found mine across a crowded room. A man who became my first real love. Not because he thought I was beautiful. Not because he wanted to possess me. Not because I was exciting for a night. But because he saw me. The insecure parts. The quiet parts. The scared parts. The parts one had spent years hiding. And he stayed. That was the love I had been waiting for. Not the love that burned fast and disappeared. The love that stayed. The love that learned. The love that forgave. The love that chose me. Again. And again. And again. I went to that gay club expecting one meaningless night. I walked in alone. I walked out carrying a stranger's number in my phone. And somehow, that number became the name I wanted to see every morning. The voice I wanted to hear every night. The arms I wanted around me when the world became too heavy. The man I wanted beside me when we were old. Josh had entered my life as a stranger. But he didn't stay one. He became my home. And for the first time, I finally understood something I had spent years getting wrong. Being desired by hundreds of people means nothing when you're still waiting for the one person who actually sees you. I had found mine. And this time I wasn't letting him go. The end.